This video is going to be on how to remove the front bumper off an Acura NSX. With a little luck, it will be uneventful. Step one, we need to remove these signal lights. The way to do that is with a really long Phillips head screwdriver, which goes into this slot here. And this is what you were unscrewing. So this right here is where the screw came from, and that is on this inside half over here. Here's the angle you'll see from the screwdriver. The bolt does not come out, so just undo it until it doesn't undo anymore. At that point, the bolt drops down a bit and you'll be able to pull this out. Okay, so now this is loose because we got that bolt out, so this kind of moves. I got one of these guys here. Just put some tape on it so we don't scratch too much up. Pop this in here. Yeah, it's a little bit tight fitting. There we are. So you're basically pushing up against this foam, or not pushing up, you're fighting this foam, which is on either side. Just to clarify, this is pretty stiff. It's tough to get out of there. I'm just putting pressure on it and letting it slowly wiggle itself out. I feel like constant pressure and it kind of slowly gets through the foam. Now once we got the light loose, we can kind of get to this connector here. So on this connector, there's a little pin under there, right there. Okay, so this is what the clip looks like. So you can see there's this little jagged clip here that's got to get pushed in order to get that off. So that's what you're fighting against. And there we have it. Now we take out our second connector. And here's your light assembly. So this just basically popped right out. And there's what the connectors were. Next, we're gonna disconnect the horn. Actually two horns, one on each side of the car. And there's a little connector all the way back there. So disconnect that horn, and then there's also another horn on the other side in the same location. So here is the connector as it sits in the car, and there's a tab on the back side here, so you're pressing down on this section here, but that's facing this direction, so you're doing the back side of the connector when you're pulling it out. Next, we're going to remove the ambient sensor connector, which is behind, well, the license plate in my case, which is back here. So I have the optional floodlights. I don't know if they're factory or not, although they appear to be. They were on the car when I bought it. I'm gonna remove those to make sure I can get to any necessary bolts. Assuming these are OEM lights, there is only one screw, a 12mm socket that needs to come out up here, and then once that's out, this whole item slides out. These were clearly added, but it looks like a factory mount, so I suspect that this is actually an OEM mount. Next, we need to remove the side skirts. Now, it took me forever to realize I don't have any because of the floodlights, I believe. Either that or when they put the floodlights in, they did not, they took the side skirts off. So that is in this area here on both sides of the car. So the side skirts would be right here. So there'd be two Phillips head screws there, and I believe it just clips into here. Mine aren't here, but that's gonna be an important step for those of you that have them. Now we need to remove a bolt that is in the center of the front of the bumper on the underside. So under here, right there. And that's a 10mm bolt. Next, we need to remove a bolt, which is behind the tow hook arm. It's actually underneath. There's a plastic bar under here that bolts to the tow hook. This is not in the service manual as noted by the NSX Prime article on this. That bolt, there's the mirror. You can see right there, there are two bolts. The black bolt is the one that's holding on the plastic arm. That's the one that needs to come off. Now we need to remove the two outermost lower air splitter bolts. So there's one here on this side and one on the other side. That's not mentioned in the manual either. It's a 10 millimeter bolt, and the reason you need to do that is because it ties into this plastic piece which stays with the car when the bumper comes off. In my case, I have that Stealth license plate bracket, and it looks like that's gonna need to come off because it is bolting to what I think is the frame in the back, and it also bolts to the bumper here, so I'm gonna take that off. So what we need to do now is remove these two bolts here, which are 10 millimeter bolts, in addition to these two bolts here. Okay, now we need to go behind the fender well. It took me a while to figure this out and which bolts were which. You're looking for 2 nuts and 1 bolt, and I'll show you which ones they are because there's a couple bolts in there I've taken apart more than I should have. So we get back here. First, the bolt. The bolt goes right here. So this is pinched together. That's the side skirt bolt. That is right here going that direction. Then the 2 bolts that you need to remove are, the 2 nuts that you need to remove. One is here. So that one at the tip of my finger, not that one and not that one. Mine are off because I did them wrong. So that one there, and then there's one more up there at the tip of my finger. That's a bolt. It's just a little bit bright. So again, nut there, not that one, not that one, and the bolt that was through here. Okay, so I'm very close to getting the bumper off, as you can kind of see. So it'll move quite a bit. It won't fall off, but you do need to be careful because the only thing that is holding the bumper to the bumper bar is some metal spring tabs, which I'll show you a little more of. So here are the metal springs, I guess you would call them here. These arms come off of the bumper bar, I guess you would say, and they attach or they connect into the foam inside the bumper. Now there is not much to this, so if you pulled hard enough, you could get this bumper off and detached from the bumper bar. So you do want to be a little careful to make sure you don't drop your bumper on the ground. So these are the springs I was talking about. You can push them in and kind of, these hook onto the foam in the bumper. So you can get the bumper off without removing this. So that means you do not need to remove the 6 bolts that hold this on, because those bolts were here, and another one was here, and another one was, it's in here somewhere, right here. So those are the 3 per side, and it looks like we have the ability to get the bumper off without removing that bar. The advantage to that is that you will not need to disconnect the windshield wiper fluid connector or the hose itself, so there could be an advantage to that. That said, it's only an additional 6 bolts, and then you can take everything off and check things or what have you. So those 2 bolts were this guy and this guy that were causing me so much trouble. And then there was an additional bolt, and that was this guy here. So those were the 3 bolts that were inside the fender well. So the bumper's now in my basement, but in relation to the weight, I don't think it's much more than 40 pounds. I didn't have any difficulty taking it off. I'm not really a big guy. And I was able to do it by myself. I mean, having a helper would be nice, but I didn't think it was that critical, because once you kind of pull it back and can get your hands behind here, I just kind of picked up from both sides and was easily able to pull it off. If you need help, you could always ask Brian. So now that I have the bumper off, I thought I would just point out a few items from the backside. Mind you, the windshield wiper reservoir and the frame rail bar are not in this bumper right now, but this is the back side. So the bolts we were getting to, here's that side bolt there. These are the 2 bolts that came through that we needed to get behind the fender. There was no bolt here we had to worry about. This is the bolt in the bottom we had to hit. These are just from the stealth bracket. I didn't take the front pieces off. This is the bolt that we did have to remove. And that's basically what the bumper looks like. I'll be doing another video to split this bumper because there's two halves, of course, because I have a split in here somewhere and I don't entirely understand how that works yet, but I'm going to figure that out because I can't live with the split. Next we're going to move 6 bumper bolts. There's one of the 3 bolts. The other is down here. And the last one is in here, right there. So there's 3 per side. We'll remove those. One item that we do need to deal with is this right here is the windshield wiper fluid, I think it's the pump. And that hose that runs along here has to be removed, and if we don't plug the pump end, it will spill all the coolant out. So not coolant, the windshield wiper fluid. And in addition to that, we need to remove the wire for the pump. So I opted to do that now, once I had the bumper partially off. What I used in relation to, to keep the fluid from draining out of the reservoir is I just grabbed some, it's actually a clay bar for claying your car, and I just kind of plugged it quick, and then I just kind of put a piece of tape over the other end. So that worked out pretty good. Okay, so we got it off. So I thought I'd add a few notes. So when you're taking the bumper off, once the bolts are undone, it will not fall, and it's because of these tabs here. So these tabs hold on to the vehicle for you so it doesn't just drop on the ground, and there's one on each side. And those bumper clips go right here on each side of the car.